everybody, and welcome to the last in a series of videos which will be exploring Theme 1's market failure. Now, we've already put together 2 videos in this series of exploring this topic. We've looked at a video on public good market failure, and we looked at a video on information gap market failure. Now, hopefully what you remember is that public goods in a free market economy would potentially not be produced. So because these products are both non-rival and non-excludable, it's very difficult to generate profit from these products. And if firms can't generate profit, they will not produce. So all the benefits these products would offer people would not exist in a free market economy. Information gaps, what we said was that to demand and supply accurately in a marketplace, people need to be rational. So they need full market information to make accurate decisions. If people lack accurate information, they're often irrational. And if people are irrational, they've got an information gap, and that would lead to them consuming and producing incorrectly within a marketplace. Now, what we're going to be looking at in this video is something we call externalities market failure. Now, everyone, you've got here an overview of what market failure is. Now, remember, what we're looking at with market failure is when the forces of supply and demand, so the free market economy, the price mechanism, it leads to a misallocation of resources. Now, this market failure is probably the most complicated one out of the 3 to explain. Externalities market failure. Now, there is quite a lot of key theory here that I need to chuck at you before we start looking into the actual market failures. So first of all, let's think about what an externality is. Now, an externality is where things happen in markets that will create benefits or drawbacks or drawbacks for people outside of a marketplace. So to give you some examples, we could have what we call a positive externality. So a positive externality would be that when you produce or consume something in a marketplace, it will create benefits for people outside of that market. So a good example could be if you were to receive a vaccination, let's say against COVID-19, then that would give a benefit for you. You know, it would stop you hopefully getting that that virus, but it would also prevent you from spreading that illness and impacting badly on other people outside of the marketplace. So you've got there an example of a positive externality. Another example could be when you consume education. So when you gain your A-levels, for example, well, that means that you become more employable in the future. It will hopefully mean that you earn more money. Well, that's good things for you, but it will also create benefits for people outside of that marketplace. So a good example could be that your future employer will benefit from your skills, your education. So it's creating a good impact on people outside of that particular marketplace. Now, externalities can also be negative. So a good example could be that when people smoke, they're not creating bad impacts for themselves, health dangers, paying for the tobacco, etc. But passive smoking is creating bad impacts on people outside of that marketplace. So another example could be someone driving a car. When you drive your car, you're creating a negative externality. You're creating CO2 emissions. Well, that's leading to, a contribution towards global warming. It's going to potentially have bad impacts on people's health. Well, those are bad impacts that you're creating on people outside of that marketplace. Now, anyway, let's think then about different costs and benefits in markets. Let's think first of all about private costs and private benefits. Now, a private cost are the costs that are incurred by the businesses and the consumers within a marketplace. So think about it logically as a consumer. As a consumer in a market, you've got to pay for things. If we were thinking about the car market, for example, if you want to be a consumer of cars, you've got to pay for insurance. You've got to buy the vehicle itself. You've got to pay for petrol. Well, those are costs that you've got to pay for as a driver of cars. If you're a business manufacturing cars, well, you've got costs as well. You've got to pay for all those factors of production. You've got to pay for the land resources, the rubber, the iron ore to make the steel, etc. You've got to buy vehicle parts, engine components, etc. You've got to pay for workers. You've got factories to pay for. You've got other machinery that needs to be paid for as well. Now, private benefits are the benefits that businesses and consumers get that operate within a marketplace. So in the car market, for example, if you buy a car and you become a car driver, when you consume that car, you've got better mobility. You can travel for work better and more efficiently. You can go on holiday. You can go on day trips, etc. They're benefits for you of being a car driver. When businesses produce cars, well, think about what's happening. They're generating revenue when they sell them cars. Well, that will hopefully mean they can generate profit and produce a surplus in markets. Now, think rationally what people do. When you buy a car, you will weigh up the private costs against the private benefits. And if you think the private benefits exceed those private costs, well, you're gonna buy that car. That'd be a rational decision to make. If you're a producer of cars, well, if the benefits, the revenue you generate exceeds the costs, that means you can make profit, and rationally, you will want to produce them cars. So you tend to find everyone that in free markets economies, businesses and consumers will make decisions based on private costs and private benefits. What people often ignore are the externalities, the external costs and the external benefits. Now think about external costs first of all. These are the negative externalities. So when we produce and consume things in markets, we're creating bad impacts on what we call third parties. And all this is people that operate outside of that marketplace. So a good example could be that when cars are produced, they create negative externalities. You've got the emissions from the factories. You've got the noise created from those factories. Well, those are negative externalities. When you drive your car, again, you're creating emissions, you're creating congestion, and that's creating bad impacts of people outside of that marketplace. External benefits, well, these are the positive impacts on people outside of that marketplace, what we call the positive externalities. So when you consume or produce in a market, you will create benefits for people outside of that marketplace. So a good example could be, think about education. So when you consume education and when it's produced, it's going to create benefits for people outside of that marketplace. So it could be that your future employer will benefit from the skills that you accumulate whilst in college and at university. It could then mean that when you're older, you're going to pay more taxes because you're earning more money, which will benefit society overall. Now, everyone, think about what we said. When people operate in markets, they think about the private costs and the private benefits. They will often disregard the external costs and the external benefits. So look at those formulas that we've got then. Social costs is made up of private costs plus external costs. Social benefits is the private benefits added to the external benefits. The only other thing to add in from this slide, though, is something that we call marginal. We've got here at the bottom marginal social costs and marginal social benefits. Now remember, the word marginal means additional in economics. So when we produce or consume additional units of output, it will create marginal social costs, in other words, additional social costs, but it will also create additional social benefits. Okay, right, everyone, what I'd now like to do is to reflect on what we've just done. So if you can hit pause, put down the answers for these questions, and when you've written down your answers, hit play and we'll carry on with the rest of the video. So hit pause now, please. Right, everyone, welcome back. Now, hopefully you've managed to put down some good answers for these questions here. Now, if you're in any way unsure about what you've written down, you need to go back and watch the previous part of this video. If you feel like you're comfortable, please carry on watching the rest of the video. Right, everyone, now you've got here quite a complicated looking diagram. Now, to explain this, I'm going to come out of share mode. I'm going to share with you, instead of the PowerPoint, I'm going to share with you this Microsoft Paint document. Now, hopefully what you can see here is that you've got what looks like a demand curve, and you've got what looks like a supply curve. Well, that's because this is exactly what this is. It's a supply and demand diagram. What we're doing now, though, we're trying to work out through supply and demand how many benefits and how many costs exist in the marketplace. Now, look, we've got them. When we demand, what we're assuming is it will create. These are the private benefits added to the external benefits. When businesses produce, they're creating private costs and external costs. And if we put these two different things together, you've got the marginal social costs. Right, okay, now remember, when we draw a demand curve, we're drawing it on the assumption of diminishing marginal utility. So the benefits people get from additional units of consumption will be less than previous units of consumption. Now look at this then. When we consume that first unit of output, so unit of output 1, it's going to be creating, according to this diagram, 50 social benefits. So that's the private benefits added to the external benefits. But look what we then get. The number of social costs created is going to be 10. Look at the diagram, everyone. At the first unit of consumption, the social benefits is 50 and the social cost is only 10. Now, what we would say is this unit of output is really, really good for society. It's creating overall 40 more benefits than costs. So that's a really, really good thing. It's creating an overall increase in economic welfare. Now, the second unit of consumption, look at this now. Unit of output 2, because of diminishing marginal utility, is creating fewer benefits than the previous one. So overall, the second unit of consumption is creating 40 overall social benefits. The social cost of this second one is only 20. So it's grown, but it's still less than what it was before. So look at that. If I take the marginal social costs away from the social benefits, this one is creating 20 additional benefits over the costs. So again, we're going to let this unit of output go because it's creating an overall increase in economic welfare. It's creating more benefits than costs. Now the third one, look at this one. That third unit of output is creating 30 overall social benefits. So it's less than the previous two because of diminishing marginal utility. And this time the social costs is at 30. Now overall, we would be happy for people to produce and consume this third unit of output because the benefits are equal to the costs. It's absolutely fine. Now what we don't want to do though is to let that fourth quantity be produced and consumed, and look at why. The fourth unit of consumption is only creating 20 social benefits, but what it's doing is now creating 40 additional social costs. So this time the overall benefit for society is now minus 20. So this will be lowering economic welfare. Now the fifth one is even worse. The fifth one only creates 10 additional benefits, but the cost now are at 50. So this one is going to be lowering welfare by 40 units of output. Now look what I've then done in the rest of this table. You've got the total social benefits. Now the first unit of consumption created 50 benefits. The second one added another 40. So total benefits are now at 90. The third unit of consumption created additional 30 benefits, which takes the number to 120. The fourth unit of consumption created additional 20 benefits. We're now up to 140. And the costs, I beg your pardon, the fifth one created additional 10 benefits up to 150. Now look at the costs. What we're doing again, we're adding up the costs as they go along. So the first unit of production created 10 costs. The second one created an additional 30, additional 20 to bring it to 30 in total. The third one created an additional 30 costs, takes it to 60. Then we got 40 to get to 100 and 50 to get to 150. Now hopefully what you can see here is welfare is maximised when we offer 3 units of production in the place. The overall welfare of this will be 60. Now look at this. If we were to offer only 1 unit of consumption and production, then welfare would be lower than what it would be at 3. If we went beyond 3, then overall welfare will start to fall. Right, guys, this therefore means then that welfare is maximised when MSD, can put it in a different colour, is equal to MSC. That is where we want to operate in this marketplace. That is where we would maximise economic welfare. So when MSB equals MSC, we've got a market doing its job properly. Here, there is no market failure. This is the market behaving properly to maximize economic welfare. So here, there would be no misallocation of resources. Now we call this the social optimum output point. Now think about why you want to be at this point here. We'll go back to the diagram again. Now, if I think about that first unit of consumption, it created 50 benefits, but it only created 10 costs. So look at that then, everyone. Those are the additional benefits over the cost that we get from allowing that unit of consumption to go. The next one, look at that. The benefits exceeded the costs. So we're going to get all that additional green economic welfare if we allow the market to move to quantity free in this marketplace. Look at the problem. If we allow the market to move beyond free, the costs now exceed the benefits. This will start to lower economic welfare. Oh. So the idea is, everyone, that we don't want to go beyond free and we don't want to stop before free. Now, if we were to stop before free, this here, we would have in the market under production and consumption. In other words, what has happened is the market is not producing enough in the market. We could increase economic welfare by producing more and selling more in this marketplace. If we go beyond free, we've got over production and over consumption. In other words, the market is producing too much and economic welfare is starting to fall. Right, anyway, going back to the PowerPoint presentation. Now, what I've just done on that Microsoft Paint document is to talk you through market failure created by externalities. The idea would be that we would have no market failure when MSB equals MSC. So in that diagram in the top right-hand corner, the price in this market should be 30 and the quantity bought and sold should be at 3. If we operate there, we've got no market failure. If we stop before 3, it would mean that marginal social benefits exceed marginal social costs, and that would be a misallocation of resources. We will be underproducing. If we go beyond 3, so beyond Q star, the marginal social costs now exceed the marginal social benefits. Again, that would lead to a loss of economic welfare, and this time we would be overproducing in the marketplace. So that would also be a misallocation of resources. So guys, what should markets do? Well, we want the market to be at P star Q star, where MSB equals MSC. That is where we maximize economic welfare. If we stop before 3, such as 1 or 2, we would lose out on that green triangle of economic welfare. If we go beyond Q star, so beyond 3, then the marginal social costs start to exceed the marginal social benefits. So we're now going to start to see a loss of economic welfare. So if you stop before Q star, you're going to have underproduction. If you go beyond Q star, you're going to have overproduction in the marketplace. So if you stop before 3, it's a market failure. If you go beyond, it would be a market failure. The only place where we maximize economic welfare is at P star Q star in that diagram. Right, what I would now like to do, please, is to take stock of what we've just done. So I would now like to use a diagram to explain what we mean by the socially optimum output point. I also want to use your diagram to explain the concept of misallocation of resources. So think about the green and the red on that diagram. So guys, hit pause now, write down your answers, hit play, and we'll carry on with the rest of the video. Right, everyone, what we're now going to be thinking about then is what we call positive externality market failure. Now, what I would say is this diagram here on the right-hand side will show positive externality market failure, but I'm going to build up to that diagram. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take you out of this. I'm going to load up a new Microsoft Paint document. So follow this with me, everyone. Oh, I'll get rid of that. So let's draw first of all what we want the market to do. So what we'll do on the axes, we'll put costs and benefits. This is also measuring the market price. And we'll put quantity on this axis here. Right, so what we know is what we should have in a market, we should have a demand, and we should also have a supply. And what we'll do, we'll label supply marginal social cost, sum of marginal private costs plus marginal external costs. What we'll then have is a demand equal to marginal social benefits, which is the sum of marginal private benefits plus marginal external benefits. And what we would say, everyone, is that the market should really be at that point there, that equilibrium point. If when people demand, if they fully think about not just the benefits for themselves, but the benefits for third parties, that is what they would demand. So that is where the market should operate at. Let's call that P star and Q star. That is where you would maximize economic welfare. Let's put that up here. So P star, Q star, where we've got the social optimum output point. So here we've got no market failure. That's where the market should be. Well, here's the problem. When people demand goods and services, we want them to think about the full social benefits. They should think about the benefits themselves, so the private benefits, and they should also think about the external benefits. In other words, the benefits for third parties. Now, in reality, people don't do this. People will base their consumption on their own private benefits. They don't give two hoots about the benefits for third parties. Now, what we should remember is that when people place less value on something, their demand will probably shift inwards. So look at this. So what I've done here, let me just get rid of that a second. I'm going to add a new demand curve. Sorry about this, bear with me. So we've got this to the left-hand side of the original one. Now, the idea is people, when they demand, in reality, they don't think about the full social benefits. They will think about their own private benefits. They will think about what's in it for them. They don't think about all those other external benefits. So, guys, the problem is when you look at this then, that when we have a market with lots of positive externalities, demand will be based on marginal private benefits, not the full marginal social benefits. This would lead to people under-consuming these products. They undervalue them, if you like. They're undervalued by society. Now look what this will mean in this marketplace then. This will now mean the market will be in equilibrium at this point here. Now at this point here, look what we've got then. The price will be P1 and the quantity will be Q1 in the marketplace. And what we've clearly got in this diagram then is under consumption. This is a misallocation of resources. Here, positive externality market failure. We want the market to be at P star, Q star, but it's at P1, Q1. Now look at the problem we've now got in the marketplace then. Let me add something else to this diagram now. At Q1, P1, the marginal social benefits exceed the marginal social costs. Now, what that means is that blue triangle is the welfare gain that would exist if people consumed positive externalities in the correct quantity. So that welfare is lost from the market because people under-consume positive externalities. So when they base their demand on private benefits rather than full social benefits, then we're going to get an under-consumption problem, a misallocation of resources. And because people under-consume it, we're going to lose out on that wonderful blue triangle of economic welfare that is now lost from the marketplace. Now, everyone, if I go back to the PowerPoint now, then, you can hopefully see that we've built up this diagram. People undervaluing positive externalities. Now, to give you a couple of examples of this, we could be thinking about vaccinations. When people get vaccinated against, let's say, COVID-19, it's going to benefit their own health. Well, that's a benefit for those people. But what it will also do is create a positive spillover effect. In other words, positive externalities. It's going to benefit third parties. It's going to stop you passing on that illness, that virus to other people. Well, that's therefore stopping them from becoming ill. Well, that is an external benefit. Quite often, people base consumption on what's in it for them, the private benefits rather than those full social benefits. And that could lead to people under-consuming, undervaluing these vaccinations. You've got public transport as well. So the idea would be that when people travel in things like buses on trains, it's going to create private benefits for themselves. It's going to get you where you need to be to go to work or to have some fun, what we call leisure. But it also creates external benefits. So, for example, by you being on a train rather than being in your car, you are reducing congestion on the roads. You're also creating less pollution. But again, here's the thing. Those benefits are for third parties. It's other people that benefit from the roads now being quieter. It's other people that benefit from less pollution in the air. So again, people will base their decision on the private benefits, not the social benefits. And that, again, can lead to an underconsumption problem. Now, you've got at the bottom some other markets where you might also have positive externality market failure. Renewable power. So when people use solar or wind power, for example, well, there's a huge external benefit there, the reduction in emissions, more sustainability. Well, people don't think about them benefits for third parties. We've talked about education, how that can create positive externalities. Healthcare, we mentioned that one as well, with things like vaccinations. Health and fitness products, though, and healthy food can also create lots of positive externalities. So if you become fitter and healthier, then you get a direct benefit from that. You feel better about yourself. You might be fitter because of it and more happy, but it also creates an external benefit. It could make you more productive at work. You're reducing the burden on the National Health Service. You might have less sick days from work. But when people consume these products, they're not thinking about those externalities. They're thinking about what is in it for them. So these things tend to be under-consumed. Right, guys, I now want you to take stock on what we've just done on the positive externalities. So if you can now write down these questions, pop down the answers, so hit pause, please. And when you've done that, if you can hit play, and we'll move on to the last part of this video. Right, everyone, what we've now got to think about is something that we call negative externality market failure. Now, again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to this Microsoft Paint document. And we'll now think about negative externality market failure. So I'm just going to draw some axes first of all. Then we'll add to this what we'd like the market to do. So we'll add on a supply and demand diagram. Now remember, we stick on the axes costs and benefits, but also this is measuring the market price, and we'll add the quantity as well. Now remember, what should happen is that demand should be based on the full social benefits. So this is MPC plus, sorry, MPB, I beg your pardon, the MEB. Supply should be based on full marginal social costs, which is MPC plus MEC. And what that should mean, if we all fully consider our impacts on third parties, then the market should really be at that equilibrium point there. So what we'll do, we'll put that equilibrium point on, and we'll label this P star Q star. Now remember, that is where there is no market failure. That's where the market should be. Now this time, the problem with negative externalities is that when businesses produce, they don't think about the full social costs. They will base supply only on the marginal private costs. Now, if you think back to supply and demand diagrams, what we said was that when business costs fall, supply will move outwards. Look at the problem here. Firms base production on private costs, not social costs. Businesses, when they look at their accounts, they will factor in the costs of raw materials, costs of workers, costs of machinery. What they don't do, if they can get away with, is factor in their impact on the environment, the noise that they might create from their factories. They're going to ignore external costs. And because they don't pay for their full social costs, because they're not paying for external costs, it means that they're not going to factor in those costs into the market. So we end up with a market equilibrium point here. Let's make that stand out. Let's mark that in red. Now look what this means. Because firms are not paying for their external costs, we end up with a situation where prices are too low. And because price levels are too low, we're going to get this massive increase in demand from where we would like it to be. So what we've got this time in this market is overproduction. We've clearly got a misallocation of resources by the free market. Businesses this time are not paying for their external costs. They're basing supply on private costs rather than full social costs. Now again, look at the problem of this. At the market equilibrium point, the red one, where the market goes to where the market failure is, you've got here the marginal social benefits, but the marginal social costs are all the way up here. Now what we've got this time is the welfare loss. So this blue triangle measures the welfare loss. And the reason why we've got a welfare loss this time is because the marginal social costs exceed marginal social benefits. So the idea is that we are lowering economic welfare by overproducing these negative externalities. Now, guys, if I go back to the PowerPoint, you've got this diagram here that we just built up together. Now, to give you some examples of markets where you're going to get this, you've got things such as the meat industry. So when they produce meat, it's often down to, well, how can we make it in the most profitable way possible? Ignore some of the bad impacts they have on people outside of that market. So they might ignore, for example, the animal welfare. They might ignore the environmental problems created by all the methane gas that comes out of those animals and the waste products. Fast food, for example, will often ignore the litter that's created around fast food places. Fossil fuels will ignore the impact on the environment, the noise pollution they might create when they produce energy. So we're looking here at markets that will ignore their external costs. Right, guys, I want you to now, please, think about these questions. So again, if you can put down your answers for these questions, hit pause whilst you do it. Once you've put down your answers, hit play and I'll show you the final part of this video. So hit pause now, please, and when you're ready, hit play. Right, everyone, welcome back. I just want to end this presentation by going again to a blank Word doc, a blank Paint document. Now, let's not save that. Now, let's start off by drawing what the market should do. So we're going to start off with this diagram. So when people demand, demand should be based on full social benefits. And when firm supply, it should be based on full social costs. We've got the quantity, we've got the costs and benefits and the price in the marketplace. And what that should mean is that the market is in equilibrium at this wonderful point here. So green is good. So if we operate there, we're going to have no market failure. So the market's going to operate at P star, Q star. Now think about why that's the best place to be at. I've been there. We will maximize economic welfare. We're going to get all that wonderful welfare, that green triangle there. If we were to go beyond Q star, this is the problem we're going to have. Make that in red. beg your pardon, let me just try that again. So if we were to go beyond P star Q star, we would have that welfare lost in the marketplace. So the idea is, everyone, that in markets we want all that green stuff, we want all that welfare gain. So the green is the welfare gain. We don't want that welfare loss, which is the red. Now think about what we're saying. If we were to stop before Q star, we would have underproduction. If we were to go beyond Q star, we're going to have overproduction in the marketplace. So the market wants to be at P star Q star. Right, everyone, now just look at that for reference now. We're just going to really quickly build up this diagram again. So we'll have the demand, we've got the supply, and we'll label this supply MSC, and we've got the demand, which is equal to the MSB. And we'll label the axes quantity, we've got costs and benefits, and we've got price. And what we'll do, we'll label where the market should be. So we want it to operate at that price level, and we want that quantity in the marketplace. Then we'll label that P star Q star. Right, and I'm just going to copy this diagram and you'll see why in a moment or two. Now, when you're drawing positive and negative externalities, what you've got to realise is it's the same diagram, we're just twisting it slightly. Let me just shift this up a little bit. So we've got where we want the market. Now, what we want to do in this first diagram is to show the problems of negative externalities. In the second diagram, we'll show the problems of positive externalities. Now, all we're going to say then is that when it comes to negative externalities, firms will overproduce. And that is because they're only basing supply on the private costs. So we're literally adding one more line to that original diagram. In the bottom diagram, what we're saying is that when people demand positive externalities, they under-consume. They're basing demand not on the full benefits for society, but they're basing demand only on the marginal private benefits. I love what this then means in the marketplace. Remember, green is good, is where you want the market to be at. But in the top-hand diagram, the market equilibrium will be at the red. So the problem here is, because firms don't pay for their external costs, those negative externalities, the price is too low. And because the price is low, we're going to get this massive increase in quantity. And what this will then create is a welfare loss in society. So you've got that red triangle there, which shows the welfare lost in the marketplace. So welfare loss. In the bottom diagram, because people undervalue positive externalities, the market will be in equilibrium at this point here. So this time, the price is too low. People undervalue it. And the market is in equilibrium at too low a quantity. So the market will be in equilibrium there. Now, in the diagram above, with negative externalities, we had overproduction. Firms were ignoring those external costs, those negative externalities, when they produce goods and services. In the bottom diagram, we're going to have under consumption and production, with the reason being that this time people are undervaluing things that create external benefits. Now, what that will mean is then we're going to get this. So this time, society would have the extra welfare if people were to consume this product in the correct quantity. So we'll call that the welfare gain. So guys, when you look at this then, the problem with negative externalities is that they create a welfare loss. We overproduce these in markets. We disregard those negative externalities. When it comes to positive externalities, we often undervalue, so underconsume them, because we're ignoring those positive externalities. Right, guys, hopefully that makes sense. And what we'll do, we'll end the video there. So thank you very much for watching.